Hey everybody, welcome to Etcetera Live. What's up, friends? It's a Sunday night here in Lethbridge, and I am beyond thrilled for my guest this evening. They have a brand new album out called When the Devil Drives. We're going to be talking about that. And I'm just going to go ahead and welcome Trevor Hurst of the Juno Award-nominated platinum-selling band Econoline Crush. Trevor, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's so good to have you here. And we were chatting a little bit before the show here about you have to sort of work with me, everybody, because I have almost no voice today. Partly because of a cold I had last week and the cough is lingering, and partly because I was out until the wee hours of the night last night. And I went out to watch two of my really good friends have tribute bands. One's a Van Halen tribute and one's a Judas Priest tribute.
Nice.
So as you can imagine, it was like a lot of yelling over people. But the reason I bring it up, Trevor, is because it was at the Langdon Firehouse.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yes, which should ring a bell for you.
Yeah, that's coming up. That's, I think, the last show of this run of dates that we have coming up.
Yes, so November 29th, and it's sold out. Did you know, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, Trevor, that event sold out in 6 hours. Did you know that?
I'd heard that the tickets were selling well. Yeah, I didn't know it was sold out that fast. That's great. That's cool.
Yeah, and you're gonna absolutely love it there. The people that run it are amazing. The food is fantastic, and the clientele is just it's an amazing place. I'm a fan of it. It's the second time I was out there last night. Nice. And I was like, it's sold out. Well, maybe I can twist Trevor's arm after the show. I'm just joking. So you also have a ton of Ontario dates coming up in November. Yes. You had a lot of dates coming in November.
Yes, we do. I mean, it starts the 28th, I think, in London, and then it just goes like St.
Catharines and
Oshawa, and like in Ottawa, I think too. And oh my gosh, I had a list of them somewhere. I knew you were going to ask me, and then I don't know where I put it.
That's okay. I have a bunch of them written down. And one of the things that I was really impressed with, Trevor, is because pretty much they're all in Ontario, except for there's a date in Quebec City.
Yes, I think so.
And there's one in Manitoba, and the other one, the only place is in our neck of the woods here at the Langdon Firehouse. So I thought, damn, Trevor must think we're special out here. And
yeah, I love playing Alberta. Yeah, no, it's great. It was a neat to get that offer and like to be able to play someplace like that, intimate show, and really, yeah, it'll be interesting. And I'm so glad it sold out fast.
Yeah, and they do get a lot of neat acts there because there's a major recording studio right in the town.
Oh, really?
And so, you know, a lot of times, like apparently One Bad Son was eating dinner and recording in there, and now they're coming as well. So, nice. And yeah, the owners are fantastic. You will absolutely love it. So, and I still might find a way to see it there. I might have to talk to the owners and do some groveling. I've groveled. It's not the first time I'd ever grovel. So, so how does it feel? I was curious. How does it feel after 30 plus years, Trevor, to know that people they're still on board? You know, they still want to come out and see you, and they still are hungry for the new music. And
it's amazing, actually. And yeah, like I just feel grateful, so grateful that people still care and still want to see the band and still want to hear what we have to say and what we create. I think this record is something that, like, it was something I needed to do even more than any of the other recordings in some ways, because it was just at that point in my life. And then all the things that happened, the COVID and the losing Zig and just so many things, it just created this need. And for me, music is kind of my religion. It's the way that I get through things. It's how I work through my issues.
I was going to say music is like therapy from you, just, you know, from what I've read and what I've understood. And we're going to talk about all this right away here quick. The album just came out last week, so how lucky am I to scoop you so quickly after the drop? Go Eric Alper, hey?
Yeah.
You were in good hands with him, man. He is quite the publicist. He's a good representation, absolutely.
And a great guy,
Yeah, super nice guy. So I just want to take one quick second and give a big shout out to my show sponsors before we delve into the album here, Trevor. So my show sponsors are called Writers and Rockers Coffee Company. I don't know if you've heard of these guys, but they have gourmet like a gourmet endorsed whole bean coffee. And you can't see this because of light. So this is the Pumps and Orphan Coffee with the Queen.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and like Harlequin has Sweet Things coffee blend. Trooper has one. Lee Aaron has one. So yeah, and so really cool Christmas gifts. I'm thinking now that the Christmas season's coming up, they're really nicely packaged, and so yeah, and they've got mugs. Like I have a Todd Kearns "Damn It" mug here, and Writers and Rockers on the back. So there's all kinds of really cool swag there, and it's www.writersandrockerscoffee.com. So check it out. And
Yes.
yeah, big shout out to them. So yeah, let's just dive right into the album here. So you know what I noticed was the title. The first thing that caught me about the title was "When the Devil Drives." And I was thinking there seems to be a slight devil theme with you because there's also the devil
Yes.
as an album. And so I'm curious, Trevor, because I kind of got in my head, I wonder if the devil is actually kind of a metaphor for something.
Well, it is. Well, both of those titles came from sayings. So the devil is like, it's sort of like that saying, it's better the devil you know than the one you don't know.
Right.
And then this one is the oldest attributed quote to, I guess, modern literature or literature in general. I think they believe it's Shakespeare, but the full quote is "needs must when the devil drives." And Ziggy used to say that all the time. "Needs must when the devil drives." And
cool.
And so we just thought it would be cool to just take the back half of it because it tied together with the original quote. But I do think the devil is a bit of a metaphor. I think it's really interesting to think about it as because they always say that rock and roll in some ways is in an acronym for sex or in an acronym for, that activity. And
that activity.
so it's devil music,
And it is to some degree.
Yeah, so it's got this whole connotation, and I think we always have loved playing with that and using that thing, and it just seemed to work, and especially when Ziggy was always saying that saying, it just seemed to fit perfectly with where we were going.
Right, and I love the new single, and I want to talk about one special song, and I know you know what it is too. But I love this single, "No Quitter." I listened to that probably 10 times today. And it's so catchy and it's so relatable. Do you know what I mean? It's so relatable. And I love the line, I had to write it down because I have a really bad memory, but spending all my time thinking how I'm going to pay the bank, the bills, the rent, the pills, alimony, sad story, walls are closing in on me. And then it launches into the course of, I ain't no quitter. And the question here is that a reference that's maybe personal to you, or do you think it just, has kind of mass appeal because everybody can relate to that?
Well, I think it's partly personal and partly mass appeal. I think that it is very much, what my friends and myself and lots of people go through when you get to a certain stage in life where you've experienced some things and had some ups and some downs, and you've lost your parents or you've lost a dear friend. You've gone through some kind of medical thing, or you've got depression. And it just feels like sometimes things are coming at you, like just, and I thought it was in an interesting way. When we were working on the song, Ian Alexander Smith, who's a producer, songwriter with me on this record, he had this music and he says, "I'll let you use this, but you have to keep the first two lines." And the first two lines are, "Goddamn boy, you better get a move on. You can't stay here. You can barely get your shoes on."
Shoes on. Yeah, I love it.
So I'm thinking about that, and I was thinking, man, I can kind of remember that where you're at a house party or something, and they were like, "That's it, it's over," and you're trying to get your stuff on, and they're kind of booting you out the door. And so I wanted the lyrics to feel like that rush. So it says those first two lines are kind of slow, and then it just sort of builds and builds and builds. And the alimony, sad story, walls are closing in on me. And then boom, the door opens, you hit the snow or whatever, and you get up and you're like two birds, and you're like, I ain't no quitter.
I love it. I like the analogy you just used, Trevor, about, you're being asked to leave a party and you can't get your shoes on. It's like, I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to move forward, but you just keep getting blindsided by stuff. And that's exactly. Right. And so what is the writing process like? I'm just curious, like, for example, on the new album. And the second part of that question, Trevor, is has it changed over the years? Does the writing process look differently for you now as, say, it did back in the 90s?
Yes and no. Like, it always seems to start with, for me anyway, music first, lyrics and melody second. So you'd have like whatever chord progression somebody plays or I come up with or somebody brings to the table, we listen to it, and then it's like whatever comes to me, like just sort of comes in as the mood or the feeling, then you start writing about it. And I think what was interesting about this record and the evolution of the songwriting thing is that I really am a big fan of David Bowie, and so one of the
Yes.
things that David Bowie says was, you know, if you're too comfortable, you're not really pushing yourself enough and
Right.
making, you know, proper art. So Ian, like when we were working on stuff, he'd have one phone playing some music part, the other phone recording me, like two like old phones, and he'd be like, and there'd be people talking in the room and moving around and milling around in this. I'd be having to like do this sort of, oh, it was crazy. And it was so out of my comfort zone. And at first I was like, I can't do this. Like, but then it was, I don't know. I just remember what Bowie said, and I was thinking, okay, let's just try, you know. And
Right.
it created some really interesting dynamics, and it made me think on my feet and just, yeah.
Right. And sometimes I think we do our best work when we're pushing through some form of fear. Do you know, like
Yes.
some of the best things can come out of just that's, you know, not crushing anxiety, but just that slight little intimidation that makes you just have that little, you know, that little bit, just get up and do it, like just do it, and you know, and
Yeah.
be okay. And I am a huge Bowie fan, so I love anybody that's a fan of Bowie is a friend of mine. I actually have above my bed like a piece of artwork, and it's David Bowie doing the. Yeah, and my friends think I'm nuts, but it's like, well, I get to go to bed with David Bowie every night, so I'm happy because I was supposed to marry him, Trevor. Didn't work out, but you know, but I'm no
Yeah.
quitter.
Yeah, there you go. Oh no, I love the fact too that he would reinvent himself, and he would
Yeah.
just like, I think being a true artist, I'm always a fan of those people that are able to create this persona and just be this character and create. I love it. I love it. I love it. And his voice and yeah, there's so many good songs. So many good songs.
Right. And I'm curious, is there a reference to Ziggy? Is there a David Bowie reference there, or does that just happen to be his name, his nickname?
That's his name. That's his
Oh,
name.
okay. That's
He
his
was
actual, okay.
yeah, he was David Sigmund, and so his nickname was Ziggy.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, you know what? We're getting a ton of comments. So I knew that was going to happen. So I'm going to get to a few of them now because I
Okay.
probably won't get through them all. Oh, Rhonda, roll it. Vogel's gang. Hi, sweetheart. She's a very good friend of the show and a personal friend of mine. She's just saying hi, Kelly and Trevor.
Hello,
She's
Rhonda.
pretty excited about this. Phil Days. Hey, Trevor and Kelly. Phil's is actually a musician who will probably be at the Langdon Firehouse.
Nice.
By the way, you can let us know. Rob P. Castro Giovanni. My favorite song is "You Get What You Give," and I started using it on my. I can't read this. I started using it as my motto in life. If someone tells me I shouldn't lash out at people who have wronged me or something like that, I always say, "You get what you give." I I found a YouTube guitar lesson of it, and I'm going to learn it as I'm a musician myself. Well, thanks, Rob. That's an interesting take on things. So, and so anyway, I do want to talk about Locked in Your Stone.
Yes.
Sadly, for obvious reasons, because as you referenced earlier, in March of 2022, you lost Ziggy, your guitar player and good friend.
Yeah.
And how did you handle that? Because my understanding is you kind of found out on your way out the door, like you found out on your way to go and listen to the final mixes of the upcoming album When the Devil Drives, and you get this phone call.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, yeah, we got a phone call from the insurance agent saying that they'd found, you know, a body in this vehicle, and so I was, yeah, it was hard, like listening to the record, you know, and that's one thing that was mixed by Jack Joseph Puig, and Jack Joseph was very patient because I was a mess. But it was interesting because I had an inkling that something wasn't right, and they wanted me to fly down to those listening sessions, and I insisted on driving from Manitoba to Los Angeles, and everybody was fighting me on that, and I just wouldn't have it, and I drove down, And I think it's because I don't know why, but I needed that time driving back to process, and I stopped a bunch of times on the way back and just walked around, stopped in the desert, and it's a hard thing losing, anybody in your life, but a musical partner, there's something very unique about the relationship we had. We shared a lot. We were like brothers in a lot of ways, and it's I really I I miss him, but yet I feel like he's with us every day. And I think the music that we made um, connects us and keeps us connected even after his death. And hopefully we'll, see each other again someday.
Absolutely, on the other side. And I would agree with you, Trevor, with what you just said about, there's something about losing a musical partner, because you become so vulnerable with each other. Like,
Yes.
with through the writing process and along with the touring and being together 24/7 kind of thing. But I think when you're collaborating with people in order to produce good work, as you guys do, it involves a certain amount of vulnerability where that you're willing to open up your thoughts and feelings to your other bandmates. And sometimes that can be kind of tricky. So,
Yeah.
and so music was definitely your therapy. And I'm wondering, did Ziggy's passing, and because I want to put a positive spin on this, did it, I guess what I'm trying to say in some ways, Trevor, did it cause you to reevaluate your life maybe in a positive way?
Absolutely. Well, both
Yeah.
in everything. Like I took a look at you start to realize, man, like every second has to count.
Yeah.
Every note, every show, every song, every lyric, it starts to become more real and more urgent. I think that was a big thing. And then also just wanting, that's why I wanted to make Locked in Your Stone, was after the record was done, and then we went back in and recorded that song because I needed to vent in a way my anger and frustration. And it wasn't so much anger at Ziggy, but it was anger at the situation that he was in,
Right.
we were both in, and that he was gone. And it was like, why now? I need you. And so it was these feelings. And it'll be interesting playing that song every night to feel how, because we've not done it live yet, and to feel how that goes over and how it feels to sing it.
I think if ever you feel his essence and his spirit, it'll be when you do that song.
Yeah.
I
Well,
really do.
yeah, like it's weird. Like there are times when I could feel him up there, and it's strange. Like, because we used to really egg each other on stage, and he used to do this thing. He called it a free form freak out. And
Sounds like fun. Shenanigans.
and he would just play like with reckless abandon, and he would say, well, this is my free form freak out. And so there's times when I look over and I can almost see his shadow there just moving in silhouette and making these faces at me. And it's still fun just having that imagination of and that memory of him. You can still kind of feel that energy.
Right. And we can never lose that. Like, you can choose not to lose that, I think, right? If
Yeah,
you just
actually,
stay connected, it doesn't have to go anywhere.
no,
You,
and
you
it's kind of
know,
what keeps them alive. It's kind of what keeps them with us, every time we speak
absolutely.
their name and feel their energy, they come.
Right. And will be a presence on this album because he did have a hand in this album, aside from, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah. And there's two songs on this record that Smashing Optimism and Invincible that we had written quite a long time ago in a studio in Los Angeles together. And it was crazy. These sessions, we recorded them in a Guatemalan church
Wow.
at Silver Lake and Sunset, Silver Sun Pickups. They named their band after that intersection. But yeah, the parking would be so tight, like they would be just getting all the cars in there, and they would be off on one side of this building, and have this little session, and it was so much fun. And Stefan Seekerson, we called him Flash because he worked so fast. He worked on those sessions with us, and it was just the three of us, and those two fought like they were an old married couple. And I'd laugh so hard every night, and every day we worked together, because he'd be like, "Shut up, Ziggy! Shut up, Flash!" And I'd be just sitting in the background listening, and yeah, those were fun sessions.
Good times, eh? And was there ever a moment, Trevor, where you thought maybe that might be it? Like, you know, when Ziggy passed, was there ever a moment where you're like, I don't know, maybe that's it for us?
Well, I wondered about the ability for us to sustain ourselves in the music business, you know, but and then I went back to school because I was getting divorced and I had 2 little boys, and I wanted to make sure that I could be, you know, part of their lives and not
Yeah.
always just be away. And I felt kind of bad about that because I always used to say, like, I don't want to fly with a parachute. I always wanted to be an artist and just solely an artist, and no parachute, no safety line, no nothing, no net. And then I was forced in, kind of, my hand was forced and I had to go back to school. And I saw this interview with Rick Rubin, and he talked about that, about supporting your art with whatever you've got to do to support your art. And there's no shame in that. And I remember thinking, you know, it's great to hear it from somebody like him,
Yes.
because I respect him greatly. And I think he's a wonderful producer and a wonderful kind of artist. And so for him to say that, you know, I felt okay.
It
And
carries a little weight, right? It carried a little weight.
Yeah. And I felt really like, I don't know, I just felt validated, because I felt like, you know what, doesn't matter what it takes. I'm always going to make music, whether anybody hears it or not.
That's right.
And he says too, one of the things he says is, like, you make the music that you love passionately, and then when you're done it, you know, that's your success. The process, the whole making of the music, that's the success. What comes after that is just icing. Like, you've already done it, you've already succeeded. You put the music that you love the most out to the world, and how they react to it is how they react to it. But if you love it, if you truly love it, then you've already succeeded. And then
I like it.
yeah, right, then you start to, like, it takes the pressure off, because commercial sales, there's so many different things that affect that and play into that. But if you know that you can put this record on any time, you weren't trying to make a song that sounded like A or B, you just made the music you loved, that was the soundtrack of your life at that time.
Right.
It always makes you feel good when you put it on.
It's going to be the best work because you're not conforming to any ideology, or, you know,
Yeah,
is it radio friendly enough and that sort of thing. And
exactly.
so speaking of the safety net, I right away think of your second career.
Well, yeah.
And I'm assuming that's what you were alluding to. So, and I mean,
Yeah.
some people may know this, but some people may not. So go ahead and tell us what your other career is.
Well, I went back to school and I got a Bachelor of Science in psychiatric nursing. So I became a registered psychiatric nurse. And then my mother passed away. Now, in the world of nursing, anybody out there that's in healthcare, you know that generally you go straight from school into geriatrics, you know, working in a care home or something, and then you expand from there. But there's all kinds of different opportunities, but there's a lot of need. So initially you start working with geriatrics, and then you may specialize in other areas. It's just where there's a lot of opportunity.
Right.
And my mother had suffered a battle with cancer and had passed away. And I did not want to go into a geriatric setting. And so I didn't know what to do. And I spent some time kind of, you know, wandering, trying to figure it out. And I ended up working at Chinupwapka Dakota Nation in southwestern Manitoba. So I'm their home. I'm back there working again. I worked there for a few years. Then I took some time off. Now I'm working again in the same place. I'm their mental wellness nurse, as well as their home and community care worker nurse. So what I do is I look after the elders and anybody that comes out of the hospital. And then I also deal with addictions and that kind of stuff, and do a lot of counseling. And I love it. And it's through that experience, actually, that I got a lot of faith. I got involved in the culture. I go to sweats, and I talk to a lot of different elders and get a lot of advice, and it's changed my world, and it's changed the way I see things. And I'm so grateful to that community for giving me, you know, the strength to go back and make this record. It's really because of that community.
Right. And it's interesting you should say that, Trevor, because one of my questions, well, it's sort of a comment with a question that was going to be, you know, as musicians, I think it sort of flows into kind of everything we do. I think our music, in one way or another, sort of just intrinsically flows into everything we do in our life. And one of my questions was going to be, is there any correlation between your work as a musician and your work, and you kind of just answered that for me. And so how did the elders inspire you? Like, is it the spirituality, because they're a very spiritual culture?
Yes, I think there's some of that, and I also think it's just like, you know, interesting. One Kushi looked at me and said, "Well, if you know how to sing and write songs, then why aren't you doing it?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, the creator gave you a gift. Why aren't you using it? That's what you're supposed to do when you're given a gift." And you know, and sometimes I thought that the wording and the way that you would say that, given a gift, you know, you have a gift, well, that makes you special. And I didn't really want to be special. So, and think of myself as special. So then I started to think about it. There was a book too that I'd read briefly. It's called The War on Art. I forget who wrote it, but you know, there's that book, The Art of War. This was The War on Art.
Right.
And the author talks about, if you have any special skill, doesn't matter what it is, that, you know, if you don't use this creator or God-given skill, then you dishonor your family, your community, and mankind as a whole, because you're not supposed to solve all the world's problems, but you are supposed to help moving the goalpost, or the ball, just a little bit closer to the goalpost. You know, even if it's just 1 millimeter, you've done your part. So that really inspired me in a lot of ways, because I thought, well, yeah, if we can write some songs that make some people feel good about themselves, or feel good for a moment, or they enjoy, or they dance around, or it kind of cuts out the noise for 10 seconds or 2 minutes, then you've done your job. You
shared your gift. And I think that my perception of what you just said, and I love the Native culture. I really, really do. I have Native in my family through adoption. But just what I had learned from her as a child, and their spirituality. And I think the idea is that we all have gifts. So I don't think it makes you special to share your gift. I think we all have gifts, and the key is finding where yours are. And then that's when the obligation comes to share them, because everybody's got gifts in one way or the other. Right. And I think it's also both can be true at the same time. You can share your gifts musically, and you can share your gifts comforting people or counseling people, so you really have the best of both worlds when you think about it.
Yeah, I really do. I'm very grateful, and I love the job that I have, you know, working in the community and helping people. And rock and roll is very
fickle.
Yeah, but there's also, I was gonna say, there's a lot of DIY in rock and roll. There's a lot of weirdness that happens on the road. You got to think on your feet. You got to fix things as you go. You got to adapt. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. There's a lot of adapting in the world of rock. Like even in the middle of a set, somebody breaks a string. Oh, we can't play that song. What song can we do? Let's do that one. Okay, quick. Let's get into that.
Right.
And it's the same thing in nursing. You know, you have to adapt. You have to be ready for anything, and find a way to get through, you know, especially in the mental health part, to get through and convince somebody, you know, today is not the day to depart the planet. Today is the day that maybe we explore our options for, you know, getting rid of this, you know, temporary problem, because we don't really want to use a permanent solution. So let's think of something else. And I think just thinking on your feet and the ability to do that comes in very handy in the world of mental health.
Oh, 100%. And have you, I'm curious, have you ever written a song based on something that you've learned? You know, is there any of your work in any songs that we know that were inspired by the job that you do as a nurse?
Not on this records, but I mean, it's weird because everything that you experience in life does come out in your music in some ways. Right. And sometimes you don't realize until years later, after you've played the song a million times, you start looking at the lyrics and you go, oh gosh, like from Affliction, there's a song called Wicked. And I used to think that I wrote that about a specific individual. And I think in the end, I really was writing it about myself. Right. And so it's interesting how that works. I think music is also an experiment in psychology and the subconscious. And yeah, there's a lot going on.
I would agree, Trevor. And I've heard it said before from other guests on the show and whatnot, that you can almost tell somebody's meant, like you can almost go back over the songs you've written and tell almost what your mental state was at the time of the writing. You know, and the progression and stuff. And just oddly enough, it just popped into my head that there's a meme on Facebook that's meant to be funny, but there's actually a lot of truth to it. And it says you can basically, when you look over your dating past, you can tell your level of mental health. And it's so true. Like when you know, if everybody in TV land, take a second and think about that. If you look over your dating history, usually it's going to correlate with how mentally healthy you were at the time you were with that person.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I totally get that. This is funny, Trevor. So Phil Days, who we were talking to earlier,
who
I said will probably be at the firehouse, he's actually opening up for you.
No, nice.
Yeah. He said we're opening up for Econoline Crush. So Phil, you can let us know if that's the Rush tribute band, because they're amazing. That would be very cool. Yeah, tons of comments here. So I'm going to read just a few more. Libby is going full rock star tonight and is curling, but she says hi, Trevor. So Libby's Phil's wife.
Yeah.
Andy Christ. Oh, hey, Andy's a great friend of the show. He wants to know, Trevor, any memories of any shows that you did with Alice Cooper?
Oh man, you know,
good question, Andy.
Yeah, good question. I mean, that whole entire tour was amazing. It's funny because the shows were great. We always had such a fun time, but it was the anecdotal stuff around the shows that I remember the most. Catering was fantastic, and so Ziggy always wore the suit jacket. Like we always used to wear, and I still do like to wear a suit jacket with whatever we're wearing.
Right.
And the catering would always have great chocolate chip cookies. So just before the show, I would sneak and drop 2 chocolate chip cookies in each pocket of his jacket sometimes, especially just before he went on if he wasn't noticing. And so he'd stick his hand in to grab a pick and he'd pull out a cookie and he'd wing it at me. And I can remember he checked a cookie at me in Red Deer, just about hit me. But Ziggy was a yoga instructor. He did hot yoga, Bikram yoga, and he liked to do yoga every day. And he would when we first started the tour, he'd just walk into the arena or whatever, pick the first dressing room that he found, you know, the one that looked the biggest and the nicest, lay down his towels, put on his little tiny briefs, and be in there like with his pasty white skin doing. And at first, Alice Cooper's manager walked in on him one day and was just like, whoa, you know, who is this guy?
What's happening?
And every day, he was just like, no, you can't be in here. By the end of the tour, they were setting up a room for him, and you know, he grew on everybody like mold.
Right. And he says, his crew is amazing. I have a picture of you with my then. Oh, what happened here? Sorry, the screen just kind of moved up as comments came in. I'll get to that in a minute.
They go fast. Yeah, they go fast.
Here we go. I have a picture of you. That's because comments are just like. So he says, I have a picture of you with my then teen son by the buses after the show, looking like rock stars. You're sorry.
What city? I wonder. Calgary?
I would Andy, you can let us know what city. Your eyeliner was on point. He's calling it guy liner though. Your guy liner was on point.
My guy liner was on point. Yeah, and like it was wild on that tour because, you know, if you got up early enough, you could catch Coop going out to golf early in the morning. He loved to golf, and it was so bizarre to see him the night before, you know, spiders and all this stuff and guillotines, and then the next day he's got his golf hat on, he's ready to go hit the ball, like play a few links.
Just looking like an old chap, eh? Like totally different, yeah. So Phil is saying that it's Machine Gun Rabbit that's backing you up, and I should have known that. Sorry, Phil. And his wife Libby is the singer.
Yes,
Libby's a really good singer.
And I know Libby from my hometown. Actually, Libby is from Virden, Manitoba, where I went to high school, and Libby went to high school.
Is that right?
Yeah, and her dad was one of the drama people in town, and so he was he directed some plays that I was in, musicals, and Libby, yeah, was at school there as well. So I can't wait to see her band and her rocket. I'm excited.
She's great. They're a great band. I saw them in Calgary last summer, and
Yeah.
Verdun, what a small world. Hey, what a very small world. So I was on the road for 23 years in a rock band in Verdun, Manitoba. Was, I think, the second gig I ever did in my entire life.
Nice.
Yeah,
Oh
and then yeah, we did a whole little Manitoba. It was Verdun, and then I think Winnipeg, and then Thompson. I remember we went up to
Lord.
Thompson. It was like -70.
And
Like
you played the
with the
head
windshield,
frame.
the head frame. Yes, the cabaret.
Yeah, I've been there. Oh, yeah,
There was a whole
nasty.
lot of tipping going on that
Yeah.
little tour back in the day, right? So Ken Holst is in the house. Ken's a really good friend of mine, good fan of the show. He's the one that organized Cornstalk last year. I don't know if you heard of that, but it was kind of like the first of its kind in this area. And Ken single-handedly put Lethbridge and Tabor on like the Rock and Roll Festival map.
Nice.
Because he had all these huge acts in, and it was sold out, and it was just an amazing act. So, yeah. So Ken is saying, when writing songs, you said it's a psychological process of sorts. As a writer, do you think it's hard to comprehend the psychological impact it can have on the listener? That's a good question.
I don't know. Yeah, like I think what's interesting is that once you release music, it's no longer entirely yours, and in fact it's now the property of the audience. And so
I like that. I like that.
Like, I know what it means to me is one thing, but what it means to the audience is a whole other narrative. And that is really something that you have to kind of remember. I never correct anyone that comes up and says this lyric means this to me, even if it was never intended really to go that way, unless it's something violent or something. But I find that, like, music, it speaks to you the way it needs to, and that's what's beautiful about it. And it takes all kinds of shapes and forms for the individual listener, and I think that's important.
Right, because perception is so random for everybody, right? And so
Yes.
how one
Yeah.
person
Yes.
perceives, that's the beauty of it all. It's all open to our own
Yeah.
interpretation.
Yeah.
And so one
Yeah.
song can have a million meanings depending on who's listening.
I love that. Perception and perspective, those two words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Ken saying, as a massive fan of all music, I know my day by the music I'm listening to.
Huh.
There
Nice.
you go. So who are you listening to these days, by the way?
I am a fan of Royal Blood. Lately I've been listening to some Royal Blood. I love
them. I love Monster.
Yeah.
Little Monster.
Yeah.
That is such a great song.
And also, you know, I really got into this side project of one of the guys from Muse. It was called Love, Fame, Tragedy, and they got a new single out. I'm not sure I understand it yet, but maybe I'll get it. And I'm a fan of Metric, and I listen to all kinds of music, you know, and but lately it's been those three kind of ringing around.
Right. Before I forget, Andy Christ is in Vancouver. So he's the one. He was the one that we were curious because he was saying he has a picture of you with his teen son by the buses after your show.
That was the Ford Theater or something. Ford Theater for Performing Arts downtown. Yeah.
Wow, what a memory you have. That's pretty impressive. Okay, so I'm gonna go steer away from the comments here for a little bit. And so one of the things I want to touch on is you're originally from Seattle. Is that correct?
No, I grew up in Verdun, Manitoba, but what happened was when I went to Vancouver.
You moved to Vancouver from Seattle.
I moved to Vancouver from Seattle. Like, I went from Manitoba to Vancouver, Vancouver to Seattle. I was in that scene for a bit when it was all taken off, and then moved back to Vancouver to form Econoline Crush.
So when you were in Seattle, do you think you were heavily influenced by the Seattle scene? Because you always think of Seattle, you always think Seattle is just being like mountains ahead of the rest of the United States. And
what I think was neat about Seattle was they didn't give a shit, you know. It was like they didn't care. Like, you know, everybody was wearing these, like, you know, the hair metal thing was going out the door, and costumes and theatrics and pyro and all this crap. They were like, no, I don't care. I'm going to wear this, like, you know, kind of felt jacket, you know, some old jeans, you know, with or shorts with long johns underneath, and you just kind of like just played these dirgy songs, and they were greasy, and it was awesome. And so at the time too, there was an industrial scene with Ministry, My Life in the Thrill Kill Cult, 9 Inch Nails, Shotgun Messiah, all these different bands. And then over on the other side, you had Mudhoney, Tad, Screaming Trees, Nirvana,
Nice.
Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. I mean, I remember going to a rehearsal hall. We'd go to this place to kind of hook up with our plug or whatever. And in one room, you'd have Alice in Chains. You could hear them practicing, and then over here, Soundgarden. And like, it was just like wild, like crazy that you could just go to a rehearsal space and hear that going on, you know, and take it for granted.
Yeah, yeah. I always thought it's like Seattle is to the States what Quebec, like what Montreal is to Canada. They're just light years ahead of everybody musically, and so I was curious whether or not you were influenced by that. And so Andy's just saying that was actually in Vancouver at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre.
Oh, really?
Just so
there you go.
So, there you go. So here's a kind of different question. So to get a little bit off the topic of music. So given everything that you've been through and experienced, and you know the 2 different careers that you have, I'm wondering if you could wave a wand and go back in time, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Relax.
Right? It's all okay.
It's a long game. And don't listen to the so-called experts. I can remember people telling us, I often talk about Sparkle and Shine because taking meetings with the radio department and program directors, and they'd be like, yeah, dude, I can't play this, you know, and having other bands, you know, being kind of snarky and go, dude, nobody's going to remember your band in 10 years. Nobody's going to care. I don't know what this sound is. This isn't rock and roll. This isn't this. This isn't that.
And that's exactly, Trevor, I got to cut you off, and I'm so sorry. That's exactly why people are going to remember your sound. That's exactly why, because what you just said is every reason why, and the fact that people are still listening to your sound. Sorry, that kind of pissed me off a little bit, so I had to jump in there. That somebody would say that to you, you know?
Yeah, like I felt, you know, and it gave me sort of this drive, because it was interesting too when I always thought that the music that the late 80s and stuff was so good, but it didn't have any like, it was always just great melodies and nice stuff, but man, it needed some slamming guitars, it needed bigger drums. And so that's all we were doing, was trying, at least in my mind, trying to make these kind of cool melodies that, you know, bands like Killing Joke and In Excess and everybody were doing, and U2, early U2, and so many other bands, and take that kind of vibe, but make it have more chutzpah. And Billy Idol. Yeah. And so that was all we were doing. It wasn't like it was super complicated, but I always wanted to have the keyboard element. I always wanted to have the loop and sample element. I thought it was important. And they would say, well, you know, all these like open chords and jangly stuff with the heavy chords, like, no, that doesn't work together, you know? And I'd be like, yeah, it does. It does.
Oh, but it does.
Yeah. And so, and it's funny because now, you know, you can't watch a car commercial that doesn't really sound sometimes like Econoline Crush. Like, it
right.
Just has
so I guess who got the last laugh, really, right?
Yeah.
There's some people out there. There's some people out there kicking themselves now, I'm sure. That's funny. So Phil Days is saying, we watched you open for Kiss and offered, and oh, he's got a question for you, and often have wondered if you ever got to try on those boots.
I got to see those boots a lot up close. It was funny in Calgary. I remember I got the best burn ever, and I thought it was like so the best burn. I was like, it was just before the show starts, and I got all my stuff on, ready to play the show, and I was walking out to the CJ van out front, and the people were lined up to go in the Saddle Dome to see Kiss. And some guy in the line yells out, "Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. U2 was last week."
Oh. And you
like,
said?
And I was like, I know. Thank you.
Wow. That's not
No,
even
it was awesome.
it's
It
not
was
even
so
an
good.
intelligent burn. It's not even intelligent.
I thought it was so funny because I was kind of looking a little Bono-esque from Zooropa or whatever at that time.
But it was
But
intentional,
no,
so it's all good.
yeah, Kiss was a great experience. We did so many dates with them in Canada and the States. We did the Psycho Circus tour. I got to eat dinner with Gene a couple times and hang out with the band. And I really found him to be quite a source of knowledge. And I loved watching them. Showmanship, man. Every night he insisted on putting on, an epic show. And every night it was, it's like wrestling meets rock and roll. It's
Right?
crazy. It's overwhelming, and I don't know, I loved it. I loved the audience. I loved the way that they presented the show, and it was good for us because we were pretty serious about our rock when we went on tour with Kiss, and he kind
Right.
of reminded us that it's all about being a showman as well.
Right. Again, that advice that you might give your younger self, right? It's
Yeah.
the,
Lighten up.
the things that we know now that lighten up, just chill, right? One of my favorite sayings when I get into a tizzy is, Kelly, just be and be okay. Just be and be okay. Because most of the time we're catastrophizing things.
Yes.
There's really nothing that but in our head. It's like, kind of thing, right? And yeah, so you have 2 children, you were saying. Are they little?
Yeah.
Are they younger? Or are they
I actually have 4. So I have a 15-year-old, 14-year-old, 13-year-old, and 4-year-old.
awesome. So you kind of got a bit of an age range.
Yeah.
So that must be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, actually.
So do the kids know you're a rock star? Like, do they know dad's kind of a big deal? Do they know that you're a rock star?
Oh, dad's not a big deal. No, they know they think it's cool that dad rocks, but he's not a big deal. No.
Your dad at home, right? You're just
Yeah.
I will still not listen to you and stick my tongue out behind your back when you're not looking. Like, you're just dad, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but they've been to a couple shows and they do find it. My youngest, she's 4 going on 5, and her eyes get pretty big watching dad jump around. But then it's just sort of part of life. That's what dad does. So, it's no big thing. She just
it's all they've ever known, I guess, right? I mean, it's just always been right. And so do the elders that you care for, do they know that you're, the successful recording artist?
Well, the first time I swore everybody to secrecy that found out. I would say don't tell anybody. But the second time, this time around, we just played this corn and apple festival in Morden, Manitoba, with Sloan, and 68 people came out from the community, and they saw the other side of my world, and some were kind of like, whoa. I remember one girl said, "Oh, you're gonna feel that tomorrow."
Right? That's funny.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And you get attached to these people, right?
Oh yeah,
you
like
just
you're part of the community, the fabric of the community, and I feel very connected. It's my extended family. I'm very close. I've seen kids grow up now. I've seen them when they were 10, and now they're 17, and it's something to see them becoming young men and women and trying to make change in their community.
Right. What a privilege to be able to be a part of that, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, Trevor, I would imagine now, after 30 plus years, there's probably 2 generations of fans. Are you noticing now that you're like, after 30 years, when you're going, sometimes there'll be, fans that as you mentioned, you were the soundtrack to their lives, and now their kids are kind of on board. Is it starting to happen?
It's starting to happen, and it's weird and it's cool. I mean, rock and roll still is a very young art form, if you think about it. Had Elvis not, taking a bunch of pills and all that stuff, he might still be here. The Stones are still here. We still have to figure out what kind of world we want to leave for Keith Richards. And
love it.
And so I mean, there's no rules, and I think that's the most beautiful thing about rock music, is that there are no rules, and so you can transcend generations. Aerosmith, I look at a lot of bands, Guns N' Roses, and they just, and Motley Crue and on and on. And you have young fans and old fans, and I think that music might be the great uniter in the end, that brings all of us together and starts conversations about where this world needs to go and how we solve problems. But I find it really cool that I have people that, yeah, we were the soundtrack of their youth, and now we're the
They're misguided youth.
Yeah, now we're the
Soundtrack to their
soundtrack of
misguided
their
youth.
kids, you know.
Yeah. That would be quite a, you know, what a privilege to belong to all that. And, you know, we were talking last week about on the show here about how that's actually a very elite group of people. And I had mentioned that, and I said the reason it's elite is because, you know, there was this era of the 80s, and I harp on this all the time. My viewers are probably getting annoyed, but it really sticks with me, is that the 80s and 90s spawned so many amazing musicians and bands and artists and albums that have that longevity and that mass appeal that we're still listening to today. And I kind of worry sometimes that maybe that might not be the case with some of the music just coming out today. So I consider that a very elite group of, you know, when you've got the next generation tuning in, I think that's something special. Like you know, that's not something every band can say.
I think it's also, there was a technological leap that occurred during the late 80s and into the 90s, where we transitioned from a very expensive process audio tape to digital audio, and the ability to record cheaper and to make more music more affordable to create. And so now you're having a very large, massive amount of music being created. We were right on that cusp of where it was like you had to have some support to make this music. And so labels were able to sign more bands, but you still needed that tape and you still needed that help.
Right.
Now it can be kind of done at home. So it is a weird time. And like I said, it's a new art form. So I don't know what this next generation of musicians is going to leave by as a legacy. I'm very encouraged though by what I hear. I love a lot of new bands. I listen to, you know, a lot of alternative music. I listen to the alternative station on satellite. I love new music. And I think that that it'll come out in the wash. We're going to see who's going to be the next one. But I think a lot of times it's just sheer perseverance. Like, you know, if you love this, if you love this art form and you love playing shows, you'll stick it out and you'll keep making music, and eventually the cream rises to the top, hopefully, and you get to stick around and play bigger and bigger shows. But that, you know, and then some other people that were doing it for maybe the wrong reasons, they kind of just fall to the wayside. But I think we were always doing it, hopefully, for the right reasons, and we were doing it because we loved it, and I'm doing it because I love it, and it's created a chunk of music that came from that time that still stands the test of time.
Right, beautifully said. That's beautifully said. I want to have one more comment here before we kind of wind things up for the night here. So Andy Christ is saying he has a whole new respect for you. Your secondary occupation is so beautiful. Blessings. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's not something people would expect from you. I think most people would probably be somewhat surprised to learn that, you know, because, but, and Shauna Lorena, hi, beautiful. She's saying happy Sunday. And she says, we have to think about what kind of world we want to leave for Keith Richards, Trevor Hurst. This is how we bring the whole world together. It's through I would agree, Shauna. Shauna is a very talented local musician herself. So
nice.
So yeah, right on. So Trevor, just one more question here for you. In a perfect world, what comes next for you?
Well, I'll tell you.
Ideally,
I get back into the studio and create some more music. We have a movie coming out. It's called Flatlander, and it is a documentary that was created during my first time working in Chinupawapka, following me around and my experience going from the world of rock to working in an indigenous community, and then and Chinupawapka and stuff. So that's right now is looking for a broadcaster. We have an indigenous production company running the show, and we're hoping to get that out there. And in a perfect world, I would be collaborating with Buffy St. Marie, with some other Susan Glucart and some other indigenous artists, and creating a soundtrack for that. And that comes out, and then I hopefully would have another Econoline Crush record, and we would just start to keep playing and playing and playing.
Right. That sounds amazing. So this documentary, is it out already or it's in the process?
It's
They're
in
in
the
the process of
process
getting a
of
soundtrack
editing.
together
So
and
it's been, yeah, it's been filmed, but they got to edit the footage, create this, you know. I've never done a movie before, never done a documentary, so I don't know exactly all the little intricacies, but they'll put together the storyline, a cohesive storyline, and once it's finally edited, we will add the score and the soundtrack, and hopefully people will enjoy it, and it will come out, and it'll, you know, be available wherever people watch their documentaries.
right. What a fantastic experience. Hey, it's almost like the one thing I love about musicians is the way they venture off into, I call it like it's creativity just oozing out another pore.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
making it's just another outlet for creativity. And so, and
yeah,
please let us know when that comes out.
for sure, for
Let us
sure.
know
Yeah.
because you can come back and we can talk about it again.
Yes, I'd love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are welcome here anytime. You're absolutely delightful, Trevor Hurst.
Thank you, Kelly.
I want to give a huge shout out to Writers and Rockers Coffee Company. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Trevor, we just, on behalf of all the fans, health, happiness, all things amazing to you, continued success, and we look forward to the documentary. And I will
Thank
keep
you.
you all posted on that. Stay tuned. Be really nice to everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week with Jay Semko of the Northern Pikes.
Awesome.